James Varney. I'm here with Jeff Duncan and Mike Triplett, my colleagues on the Saints beat at the Times-Picayune, and we are coming to you from Sunsplash, but a little nippy, California here, where the Saints have been practicing at Oxnard and coming up on their third preseason game at Oakland Sunday night. The starters are going to get more snaps in this game than any other preseason. I know you guys were in this exact position back in 2009. Now, when we asked Drew Brees about this, you know, he gave us some answer like, well, if we play really well, it doesn't mean we're going to play well every Sunday, and if we don't play well, it doesn't mean we're going to stink. But are we going to get an accurate snapshot, do you think, of the Saints in 2011 this Sunday night?
Well, yeah, and obviously everybody brings up the Indianapolis Colts, who I think there's some more preseason losses than regular season losses over the last 5 or 6 years. So the preseason doesn't have to, win or lose doesn't have to mean anything. But yeah, 2009, they played their second preseason game at Houston, their third preseason game at Oakland, exact same setup. And we saw wow in those two games. They destroyed Houston. They destroyed Oakland. I don't have the score in front of me. Something like 38-3. Drew Brees had never looked better. They were firing on all cylinders. They were running for touchdowns, passing for touchdowns, and you couldn't ignore that. Okay, this is going to translate. Right. So you could say yes and no. If they come out and score touchdowns on their opening 3 drives, and Brees is 8 of 9 passing, we'll say, you know what? It took them a little while to maybe shake the rust off, but now they've tuned up. If they continue to struggle, then you can turn and say, okay, well, that's all right, because it's still the preseason. They're still working out the kinks, so you can fall back on that. But, yeah, I mean, there are times where the preseason is an indicator, and so far in this preseason, we have not yet seen them firing on all cylinders. And obviously we talked about that defensively, too.
Right. So Mike's way out on the yes or no limb.
Yeah, he hedged pretty well there, didn't he? Only thing I think Saints fans want to see, and I think we all would agree, is a little better effort and a little better intensity out of the team than what they showed Saturday in Houston. I just didn't think they really showed up. Yeah, I thought offensively they played pretty well and well enough. They got to eliminate the turnovers, but I thought defensively there was not energy or effort there. And even some of the defensive players talked about that yesterday. They said tackling is about want to for the most part, and they didn't seem to want to on Saturday night. I think if they, and I think they'll get that. I mean, Greg Williams isn't going to allow them to have another sleepwalk performance, but they get enough effort there, and I think the efficiency will come with the effort. You know, this team's well coached. We know that. And if they get enough guys on the field, too. I mean, let's not forget how many guys they've had out, how many regulars they had. I think at one point this week there's 17 guys on the injury list. We don't know who all is going to play and who's not, but if they get most of their front liners out there, I think they're going to be fine. But I do think it is an indicator this week. This is going to be 3 quarters of work from the regulars. And I think if the first-team offense isn't scoring, there's a problem.
Right. Well, and as Jeff just alluded to, the first-team offense might be missing Carl Nicks, and in fact probably will be missing Carl Nicks at guard, and Mark Ingram might be limited because he's missed some practices. So we don't know if they're going to have every weapon, but pretty close. Right. And then the other question that we sort of talked about this week is Oxnard, and will the Saints be back here next year, and do they want to make this kind of a regular feature of a piece of their camp or their whole camp? And do you think that what happens Sunday night influences that? I mean, if they go and lay an egg at Oakland Sunday night, is Tom Benson going to go, well, I don't want to spend the money to come out here, and then you play bad? I don't know if that's going to be the deciding factor. What do you think happens next year with Oxnard, and how do you think this week's gone?
Well, I definitely think they want to come out here. I think that's pretty clear. Everybody we've talked to in the organization from the top on down, I think, believes in this camp, would love nothing better than to be out here for a few weeks, but I also believe that it doesn't matter where they hold camp. Right. You know, I think it's what you put into it. They could have it in Nome, Alaska. It doesn't really matter where the venue is. So I'm not a big believer in the cool weather, and that's going to help them win a Super Bowl. But I do think that the Saints would love to get away somewhere. I think that's always been Sean Payton's belief. And what better place than this, I have to admit. I mean, it's pretty – you don't have to worry about the rain that we have in New Orleans, moving fields. But also, along those lines, think at some point they need to be back in New Orleans for at least a week and have practices for the locals. I mean, those people there support the team. They want to see the team. And if they can work out some kind of split camp like the Cowboys do between New Orleans and out here, I think that's probably the best of both worlds.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I think everybody thought they might come out here this week and it'd be like Bear Bryant taking kids and breaking them down, and actually Sean Payton did that in Jackson his first couple years. He talked about trying to run these guys into the ground and kind of reshape their identity. It has not been about that this week. We have not seen the most intense practices we've ever seen, or anything like that. But one thing we have seen, and that they've been saying over and over again, maybe they're just trying to sell the idea, but I think they really believe in, is that these weather conditions allow them to have longer practices and they can pack more in, more reps. And I think in this particular offseason, they've been way behind on installation. Normally you get all your installation done in OTAs and done for a second time before the preseason opener. And this time they didn't even have their installation done. Peyton said they hadn't even installed like goal line packages before the first preseason game. I think the main thing that he wanted to do, especially a guy like that who has a thick playbook, and Greg Williams too, is say, all right, let's get 5 full practices in. Let's install everything. We're seeing 2-minute. We're seeing that 1-minute offense with 1 timeout. We're seeing a lot of situations. I think they've probably put in half their playbook this week. And for guys who've been around, for veterans who've been around, for Breeze, and people are wondering if he's not quite on his game yet, this is the important stuff. This is, they're getting it all in their heads now. They're doing it all on the field. So I think they would say they got incredibly important work in that aspect. And I think that's part of what we've seen so far with this team is the amount of work they've done on the field so far is a month behind where they normally are at this time, and I think you're seeing rust league wide, except for not from the Houston Texans.
Right?
Yeah. But I mean, the same argument can be made. I mean, that's what they have the indoor facility for. So if they want to get these reps,
But they say they like the grass.
right? Well, I'm sure they do. But the rep part is what they've been selling all week. They could do that in the indoor facility. I think they just like being out here, and I certainly understand it. So I understand that, and I think they like getting away. Let's face it, there is a convenience to that camp. The dorms and everything are right there next to the stadium. I mean, next to the facility. So I think it's a perfect situation for a camp. But
especially when you've got a game scheduled out here in California.
Yeah, but this thing's going to come down to money. I mean, if it comes down to a bidding war between Jerry Jones and Tom Benson, I think Jerry Jones is going to win that bidding war. He doesn't lose very many of them. But it'll be interesting to see if Tom Benson steps up.
Right. Well, I know that Jeff and Mike and I would probably all vote to come out here next year, but I don't think Coach Payton or Tom Benson's going to ask us. But the three of us will be back in New Orleans with the Saints next week, where we'll do another edition of the Black and Gold Report.
We're